We're, we're good. All right, welcome back. Bourbon Brothers, episode number 11. Justin Hall, supplement Snoop. Robert Chinetsky, supplement engineer. Robert is not wearing any LSU gear this week. He's already abandoned ship. He's jumped off, and so we're gonna have to talk about that. And Gerhard's here already.
Gerhard is how do you say that? Toost?
Toost.
Seconds?
I love that. It's very subtle. I like that.
There we go.
All right, Robert. Let's get started. What is this? What is the no LSU stuff already, man? It's only one game out of conference. What happened?
I'm not on the bandwagon for getting rid of Ed Orgeron yet. I'm nowhere near that. But if you go on like the LSU message board, so Tiger Droppings is the main message board. They said they need to start packing the bags and do it. Like they're trying to create all this other controversy and stuff. And granted, I didn't watch a single game last season. But going back and looking through some stuff, we were 5-5. We brought back Bo Pelini as our DC last year, he was a DC under Saban, and he was a carryover for Miles first couple of years, and then he went to Nebraska and all that other stuff.
Which is interesting, not to cut you off there, but it's always, we talk about this grass is greener scenario all the time, especially in college football. Look at Nebraska, right? Nebraska thought they could do better than Bo Pelini as a head coach, and they've been shit. Scott Frost has been a disaster there. It's like, It's not always greener, man. We see it all. Hell, I mean, Miami does it every 4 years. So
yeah, and I don't want LSU to go in that trek. Like the patience and attention span of college football fans, or just any sports team, it's kind of like the supplement industry. It's like, what have you done for me lately, kind of thing. Like if somebody could release a dynamite pre-workout at the beginning of the year, come October, you forget that brand even exists because they're not inundating your email inbox or social media streams or releasing a new product every other week or anything like that. So you need to have time to let the team build out and all this stuff. So we had an amazing 2019 season. We lost Joe Brady, who was, the co-offensive coordinator, passing game coordinator. Steve Ensminger's no longer on staff there. He was the actual play caller. Yeah. We lost Dave Aranda. So like our DC wasn't there. So that's why we brought in Pelini. Pelini was a train wreck of all last season. I think it was the worst LSU defensive performance in terms of like rush yards allowed, points allowed, and passing yards allowed in the history of the school. Now, granted, college offenses are much more developed than they were 100 years ago when we first started playing football. But still, man, it's just like we watched the first 3 quarters of the game. Like we were over at a friend's house. We had the Clemson and Georgia game on one screen, and we had the LSU UCLA game because they started within about an hour of each other. And he's a huge Clemson fan. They looked like they couldn't get anything done. We looked just as inept.
That was a weird game to watch, that Clemson-Georgia game.
It was low scoring.
I was like watching it like it was on, and I'm like, still nobody scored yet? You don't see a college football game that defensively dominated anymore. The pick six was the only touchdown.
Yeah, I mean, it reminded me of like the old SEC football back for like when Sandy and I were there. Like it was routine for us to only score like 17 or 20 points, and we would hold somebody, like especially with our 0-3 defense that we had with Saban. We would keep opponents to like 3 to 6 points a game. And we didn't have an offense. We had a bunch of running backs and not a really great quarterback.
Well, even like when you look at like Alabama doesn't do that anymore. Like it's just not college football anymore. No. Like even Alabama with all their because not to talk about too many things at once, but like even the Miami game, there was a lot of opportunities Miami had to score in that game on Alabama's defense, and Alabama's defense, they're already saying might be like one of the best defenses. Giving up 20 points these days is basically like a shutout. With the way the college football rules are and the way offenses are going, like this is different now. And I think like the LSU team in 2019, man, it's like that was such a lightning in a bottle team, but also not, because LSU, I think, routinely makes good decisions. They recruit well, so it's not necessarily like it was a fluke. That team, just everything came together perfectly, like at the right time. So it's like fans get spoiled. I think Miami fans it's a little different because Miami was dominant with some of the most like crazy loaded teams of all time. But now it's been 15 plus years, and I think what you're getting at, and I don't know, like correct me if I'm wrong, but it's not necessarily when you lose or whatever, but it's the how.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And what Miami fans are pissed about is it's the same. You're losing the same way all the time. There's no like, you're not seeing. It's like fuck the score. The score doesn't matter necessarily, but it's how did we get to that score kind of thing. So I think that's what you're talking about with like Bo Pelini. It's like on stat wise, it might say one thing, but how it's like just watching it. You know what you're watching at this point if they know what they're doing.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that 100%. It's just like you want to see the team have heart and have fight. But I mean, the quarterback, it's Brad Johnson's son. So Brad Johnson was the quarterback for the Bucs when they won their Super Bowl under Gruden, in the early 2000s, and 02, I think that Super Bowl was. So we got his kid on the team at quarterback. So you're hoping there's something there. I mean, he looked decent, but he looks like he's just got a fastball, like he's got no touch on the ball. And granted, this is a first game on the road, jitters and all that stuff. I understand that. That's fine. But I mean, like the defense looked abysmal, and based on what I read from last season, it looks like those issues weren't fixed, even bringing in a new DC,
right,
and all of that stuff. So we're gonna see what happens. I mean, based off that first game, I told Sandy, I said, "Well, we didn't watch any football last year." I said, "We might not be missing out on anything. We don't watch football this year either."
Yeah,
but I mean, I'm gonna watch. We play McNeese State this weekend, so if we don't put up like 50 on them and hold them to like sub 17, we've got some big issues.
Right. College football is so weird too. It's so like about matchups and, like with COVID restrictions and practices and stuff like that. Like, that was the other thing. Like, so UCLA's got Chip Kelly. At some point, despite over the last couple of years, they were really bad.
Yeah.
Chip Kelly's a fucking good coach.
He's smart, yeah.
And they also got a lot of really good transfers. Like that one running back that looked like a beast for UCLA. He was from Michigan. He was like a 4-star recruit. That the transfer portal is changing college football completely now. You know what I mean? So you get like from one year to the next. Like Miami plays Michigan State coming up like in a couple weeks, and Michigan State at some points last year looked like they weren't even. Shouldn't even be in Division I football, but they got all these transfers and things like that. So you're like looking at like a totally different team. It's such a free agency thing going on in college football these days. So much can change over an offseason. You don't know what you're getting until it sort of like hits the field. Like with the Miami thing, like I still have no idea because they played Alabama, who everyone's like, oh, Alabama lost all this talent. It's like, well, yeah, they were replacing All-Americans with the next wave of All-Americans.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just the type of team that they have. They're a juggernaut. And it's like, so Miami fans are freaking out, which the way they lost, the offensive play calling pissed me off. The offensive coordinator, he coached this game exactly like he did last year in the Clemson game. It was just hyper conservative, running it, up the middle constantly. And it's like, what the hell is this? Like, if you're going to beat Alabama, that's not how you're going to do it. Like, you got to get kind of lucky. At times you got to be more aggressive. So anyway, I have no idea from that game what kind of team they are. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it's
what I found really interesting is that the UC. So I wasn't any under illusions that we were going to go 12-0, 13-0, anything like that this season. I thought something respectable, 10-2. 9-3, maybe something like that, and then get into the SEC champion. I don't even think we were going to go in the SEC championship this season. I knew Ben was probably going to win our division.
They're pretty good.
Yeah, like I expected us to beat UCLA though. I think an inferior conference, an inferior opponent. Apparently, I mean, just the coaching crew didn't come with their thing, or the players didn't sack up and take the field in a good way. But what I found UCLA was giving away free tickets to the game. And that bitch was still empty. That stadium was still pretty empty. Like they had huge sections like tarped off in like giant light blue that's to spell out UCLA. Just that's embarrassing look for a home team if you got to do that kind of shit.
Especially in a game like that too. But that's just kind of the thing. Like it's USC's kind of like that. UCLA, it's like Miami goes through that when they've been really bad. Like when Miami does pretty well, even shows a little life, their stadium gets pretty crazy. But it's also like it's Miami, it's South Beach. Like if the team's not any good, then fans have other things to do. Like,
yeah, exactly.
It's kind of like UCLA in California, where it's like, okay, there's other, but you would still expect UCLA fans to show up, especially because they've had such a crappy team for so long. And I don't know, man. It was like I watched a little bit of the game. UCLA looked pretty good. I mean,
yeah,
it's tough to say like how it just again, like going back to like I don't know how much it really tells you about anything. It's like one game in college football is not a very good like barometer. Like Miami plays Appalachian State this week and then Michigan State, and then people are like, oh, well, we'll find out more about the team after they play those teams. I'm like, will we really though? Like, yeah, of course, but it's like they're gonna. I mean, unless they lose, like unless they get beat up, then it's like, okay, wow, we're really gonna have problems. But if they beat them, what does it really tell you? Kind of thing. It's just, and then you had like North Carolina lost, Clemson lost, Miami lost, so it's like ACC is. Who knows this year?
It's up for grabs at the moment, yeah.
Yeah, it usually is anyway. Well, at least our side is usually up for grabs anyway. So,
did Florida State beat Notre Dame?
That was
okay.
So they ended up going to overtime.
Okay, so I didn't catch the game.
There's a really fucked up, savage comment I read from a Miami fan. I'll get to it. So, I didn't watch the game, but it was a good game.
Yeah.
And so that kid, remember the Milton kid from UCF, the quarterback that broke his leg a couple years ago and almost lost his leg?
Yeah.
So he ended up going to Florida State. He came in that game and he led them to a touchdown on his first drive in a couple of years. It was actually as much as I hate Florida State, it was pretty cool.
Right.
But so they go to overtime and Florida State missed a field goal, and then Notre Dame kicked the field goal and won the game. So they beat them, I think it was 30-35.
Mm-hmm.
So a Miami fan said, they were like, oh, that was a touching tribute Florida State did for Bobby Bowden in overtime. And I was like, man, that's fucked up. Because it was a wide right field goal, I think. And I was like, they're like, oh, that was a touching tribute to Bobby Bowden. I was like, wow.
That's horrible.
I thought that was a dick. I was like, that's really bad. So,
good God.
It was a good game. I don't know. I think it says, I don't know if Florida State's that good. You know what I mean? So it's like, I don't think that looked good for Notre Dame. But first week in college football, anything can.
Yeah, there's no preseason games, and then we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. It's a
lot of COVID restrictions for practices and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, agreed. But yeah, on to week 2, we'll see what happens. Every team in the SEC won except for us and Vandy. Every Louisiana college team lost, so just not a good weekend for. So yeah, I was talking to on the phone to my dad yesterday. They finally got power back last night too, after not having it for a week and a half when Ida swept through. So that was fun.
Yeah, that's horrible. I can't function when power goes out for 2 hours.
Yeah. Well, luckily they've got one of those natural gas generators that just plugs into the line of the house. They've had and they've got it sized to fill out the whole house and everything, so they're fine. But it's a massive inconvenience because they didn't have that until after Katrina hit. Because before that, when we were growing up, you'd pull out the little gas generator and put a gallon of gas in it every couple of hours or something to keep the refrigerator running. But that was about it.
Oh, for sure. Well, I would think too. Because my one friend, he lived in New Jersey for a while. They get those crazy storms and knock out power and stuff like that. It seems like every couple of years. And I would think that if you're in that area of Louisiana, you have to take some precautions at this point.
Oh yeah, stuff.
If you don't, it's kind of your fault.
Well,
it's coming.
The funny thing was, growing up, hurricanes come through, you just grow up doing that, and so we would routinely go. So we live on the western side of New Orleans. So, New Orleans is you look at the map of Louisiana, it's got that L and you see that little blue circle near the bottom. That's Lake Pontchartrain. We live on the south side of that. So when a hurricane comes through, you're trapped basically between the Gulf of Mexico and Lake Pontchartrain. So you've got 2 bodies of water bearing down on you.
Right.
But hurricanes, when I was growing up as a kid, they hadn't had a major storm that came and kicked ass or anything since Betsy and Camille in the 50s and 60s. And so we'd go out to like the lakefront and go stand on the levees at the lake and just watch the storm come in. And we'd have hurricane parties and all that. And we'd have sleepovers. We'd have like all just kind of fun stuff and goofing around. And then Katrina hit and like all the parties just stopped. And people realized,
oh shit,
we should probably take this a little more seriously.
Yeah. That's kind of, I think, like I said, there was I can't remember whatever it was, the storm that came through a few years back through Jersey, where it basically knocked out all their power. It was whatever, I can't remember which one it was, but it was really bad. And I think that was the same kind of thing. People were like, oh shit, this can get pretty intense.
Yeah. Jojo wanted to stop in and say what's up. And then he's also got a follow-up bet for you, Justin.
I will say this. So I absolutely despise Miami's head coach. Like, the whole process, I could go on a huge rant about this. The hiring process that Miami did for him was fucking embarrassing. The one thing he can do is beat Florida State. Like, that's all I think he's good for. So Miami's going to beat Florida State again this year. They might not beat too many other teams. I don't really know yet, but they'll beat Florida State.
There we go. Anybody else tuning in? You guys got any comments or questions for us? Throw them up. It doesn't have to be college football related or fitness, training, nutrition. It could be anything, whatever you guys got.
Yeah, because I'll also, on a bourbon note, I told you about the so Buffalo Trace stuff is so hard for most people to find.
Yes, it is.
And what the hell was the name of that site? So I went on. Let me find it for you quick, because it should be arriving this week. I went on, usually websites, they'll have like regular Buffalo Trace you can get for a decent price.
Yeah.
20 some bucks or whatever, but Eagle Rare is normally like $80 on websites, which is, I love Eagle Rare, but that's a little bit too much.
Right.
And
it's a 10-year bourbon. It's what, 90 proof?
I can't remember, but you can get it for like, $35 or whatever.
Yeah.
$40 if you can find a retail.
And that's what it should be. I mean, it's like Eagle Rare is 10-year-old bourbon, and the Russell's Reserve 10-year is always on the shelf, and that sucker is $29.99 everywhere I go.
Yeah, I usually have that on hand because it's like $30 and it's really good.
Yeah, it's super solid.
So what I did, it's called Western Bourbon. They had a bundle deal of regular Buffalo Trace and Eagle Rare. And I think it was, what did I tell you? It was like $70 or something like that, 70 some dollars between the two of them.
Yeah.
And I was like, because like I said, Eagle Rare, we know that we're going to pay up for Eagle Rare, but it ended up being like, about $50 a bottle, which is, I was like, Eagle Rare is really good. I was like,
yeah, it is.
But what ended up happening was you can only order 6 bottles total from this website per order. But once you went over, so shipping was like $40. Right?
Yeah.
It always is. But once you went over a certain amount, shipping was free. So I ended up getting like the last bundle of those for like basically like $30 because it paid for the shipping. Sweet. And then it paid for like the other bundle. So I ended up getting 6 bottles. I got 3 Buffalo Trace and 3 Eagle Rare, like 200 and some bucks shipped from the site. So it actually worked out pretty good because I love Eagle Rare. It's definitely one of my favorite bourbons.
Yeah.
And it's very hard to find.
Yeah, it's like, I know you've told me about it before, and I always look for it when I'm at Total Wine or Specs. I mean, I've checked some of like the little mom and pop stores around here, but their selections suck compared to the bigger box guys around here. I just pulled up one website called sipwhiskey.com has a 3-pack of Buffalo Trace, Eagle Rare, and Sazerac Rye. So all of those are owned by, like, Sazerac owns Buffalo Trace and all of that stuff.
Yeah, I've seen that bundle. I know exactly what site you're talking about.
Yeah, it's $120. That's not bad. I mean, that's, what, $40 average a bottle?
Yeah, so you're paying $20 or whatever for the Buffalo Trace and then $50 piece for the other one. That's pretty good. But then you factor in shipping, which was what was cool about this site when I was like, oh shit, I can get it free shipping if I ordered. And it worked out perfectly because I had 6 bottles and just so. Anyway, that was a good. And then I told you I'm getting, so a friend of mine is sending me the McKenna 10-year.
Yes, I've heard great things about that. It's obviously you can't find it, like kind of like Buffalo Trace.
Yeah, it's bullshit. And if you do find it, it's like $100 and some. So I think he gets it for $40. You know, it's retail, $40. So he's going to ship it here, and it's the secondary market on bourbon, and it's bullshit.
It is.
Really takes the fun out of it. I think for me, like, because I'm like, well, we've had this conversation before. It's really good stuff, but at the same time, like, I don't want to go through, I don't know, jump through all these hoops and get totally screwed over. I'm the type of person, like, I don't buy that many things for myself. So when I see something I want, I just get it.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't worry about the price. But when you know how bad you're getting screwed over on some of this stuff, it's like, no, man, like I'm not going to do that. So it was good to get a couple of the harder to find bottles this week, and then I'll basically be stocked up for a while.
Good deal. Yeah, it's there's so many good affordable bourbons. Like it's not worth the hunt for me, like you said.
Exactly.
And I'm not going to go try to find the Colonel E.H. Taylor, the Stags, or the Stag Juniors, the BTAC, the Buffalo Trace Antique Collection stuff. I'm not going to do that. I mean, if I can find a really good like single barrel Knob Creek or like their cask strength that they release every now and then, because I don't see much of the 12-year Knob Creeks around us. But I love Knob Creek. Like the regular standard offering, the 9-year is fantastic. It's 9 years old, 100 proof, right up my alley, and it's just it's always on the shelf.
Yeah. There's something to be said for the convenience that if you know something is going to be there. It's one reason why I really like High West. You know, it's like it's easy to find, it's really good, and it's cheap. And it's like, so why am I gonna, you know, like bend over backwards and break the bank for? So sometimes you just buy a bottle just to have it sit there to be like, I found one.
Yeah.
But you don't drink it.
Right. And I finally got to try Garrison Brothers Bourbon this weekend. So I sent you the picture of like the guy's house we were at. He's in the healthcare industry, but he's in like the tech space of the healthcare industry. So helping get the medical records and security for the hospitals and all of that set up. And so he would get vendors come through, and one of the vendors gave him like a combo pack of like the little 375 milliliter jars of each of the two offerings of Garrison Brothers. So they're 94 proof and they're 107 proof. And so all three of us are trying. We had never cracked them open before, but he knew that Sane and I are both big bourbon fans. And so he said, all right, well, let's just try it. We were comparing that to a couple of the other bourbons that he had and some stuff. And it's good. It's nowhere near the price that they charge for it. Not even close. Not even close.
No, we were actually just talking about it on the same day you sent me that. Some friends and I were talking about, because the same guy I told you, he lives in Minnesota, man. He has access to fucking everything. Yeah. So he'll ask us, he's like, you know, do you want a bottle of this? Do you want a bottle of this? I'll ship it to you guys. And the Garrison Brothers, even at retail, I'm kind of like,
Oh yeah, it's like $90 a bottle, or
it's not. If I'm going to pay that much, you know, you have basically endless options. If you're going to pay retail $90, right? Not the secondary market, but I'm just like, it doesn't do it for me. It's good, but it's nothing where I'm like, oh man, I got to have that for $90 a bottle.
Correct. Yeah. There's so many better options, or things that suit my palate. Better, I guess, is the better way to put it.
I'd much rather have 2 bottles of Eagle Rare or 2 bottles of McKenna or something like that than Garrison Brothers.
Agreed. Or Rare Breed, Wild Turkey Rare Breed is. I need to get a bottle of that. I always forget about that to pick some of that up.
That's good stuff.
That's really good. That'll have to be on the next store haul, because that's another one that's a great high proof bourbon, very well priced, good age on it, like between 6 and 8 years, I think, and it's always on the shelf. $42 at the Total Wine by me. So
yeah, I was surprised there was that one, because you think you get in that mode where you're like, oh, the big guys, they can't make. But I remember the first time we had Gentleman Jack, I was like, this is really good. I was like, I really like this. And then the Wild Turkey Rare Breed, I was like, this is good stuff.
Yeah. Oh, and if you haven't had any of the Jack Daniel's single barrel stuff yet, go for the Jack Daniel's single barrel, or their barrel proof, like the single barrel select, which is like their 120 proof or something like that.
Oof.
That's really good. But they're even just the regular Jack Daniel's single barrel. I got it for like $45. It's 94 proof, but it's, I mean, like the little decanter that it comes in is freaking badass, man. I love the look of the packaging that it comes in.
There's some cool stuff when it comes to bourbon packaging, for sure.
Yeah, there is.
I was just looking at I was looking at the other questions here.
How many times in a day can you take a non-stim pump?
I guess probably as many times as your budget allows. I think like when people say like non-stim pump, also it's like saying it's like which non-stim pump, right? There's such a wide range of pump products now, but it's like there is some thing because we know that if you're going to raise nitric oxide levels and all that stuff in the body, it doesn't really last that long.
Mm-hmm.
And there was I think some of the citrulline stuff is split up. Like if you took it like earlier in the day and then later in the day, like you can do that. But I mean, is that going to move the needle when it comes to like budget? Like I would guess, like I would ask them like, why do you want to take a non-stim pump multiple times a day? Like, cause I know I've had conversations with people, there are some ingredients, some blood flow. Vaso-6 was one of the first ones we started talking about this. Mm-hmm. I started taking it at night in addition to like a sleep regimen, just for some sort of like, just hypothetically speaking, like I wonder what this would be like at night, because maybe increase blood flow, nutrient delivery as you're trying to recover anyway. I'm like, I wonder if there's something to this. And I did notice that I would sleep a little bit better when I would take Vaso-6 and stuff at night. So, but that's also us who has endless access to like supplements like at all times. Like if I was paying for it, like would I do that? Probably not.
No, and I would agree with you. And plus there's also a point of diminishing returns. Like to your point, what are you really getting out of it if you take it a couple of times a day? Now I'm assuming maybe JoJo's training in the morning and in the afternoon, but one of those sessions isn't going to, I mean, I don't think you're training balls to the wall at both sessions in the morning. Like now let's say maybe you are training balls to the wall both sessions, but the amount, like the actual time that you're training, you don't, like it's going to be 30 minutes in the morning, 30 minutes at night, or maybe 45 minutes and 45 minutes, or one's going to be a resistance training, one's a cardio session. It's eventually going to be a waste of money. And if it's something that's a nitrate based one, if it's something that's got like a heavy dose of nitrates in it, like Ghost Pump or FSU or the Unbound stuff, I mean you got to be careful with those nitrates, because you could go hypo eventually, hypotensive, and go low blood pressure. So be careful with that. Plus, eventually you can take so much of either arginine-based products or citrulline that your body's either kind of going to convert it and excrete it, and you're not going to get much benefit out of it, or it's going to lead to a lot of GI distress.
Yeah, I don't really see the point. Like even as much as I have 100 pump products sort of sitting here, I don't take it outside of more than once a day. Doesn't really make any sense.
Yeah, exactly. Another one from JoJo. Thoughts on going all carb day? Literally all calories and carbs besides 3 protein servings of Apollon protein throughout the day.
I would just want to know why. Agreed.
I know he's in prep for a bodybuilding show. I think that's 5 weeks out, but even still, that's still only like what, 75 grams of protein. That's not enough protein.
Well, like I understand the concept around refeeds and things like that, and strict dieting things. So if you want to have like a massive like carb blowout, I get that part of it too. But you would still want to hit your protein count.
Yeah.
I'm not really like, as much as I always rely on supplement or like whey protein supplements, just because I don't eat enough meals throughout the day. I just don't like to eat that often. I'm not real big fan of getting all over your protein from protein shakes. Like it's just kind of, we know that it's not as good like as eating like real food. I don't know. I would just
it's not as satiating, especially if you're in a diet phase. It's definitely not as satiating.
I mean, is it gonna like ultimately matter if you do this like once? Like no, but I guess I would have to hear the context of doing this.
Yeah, I would agree.
It'd be fun.
One day, like if you just want to, dick around and just have a total shit day of eating, you can get by with it. I wouldn't do it, make it a habit. It's not like once or twice a week you should do this. I don't think that's a smart idea, especially if you're trying to optimize body composition in the midst of a prep.
It would be fun, although most like high carb stuff that I would want to eat is also high fat. So
yeah. I'm Rick. There we go. I'm Rick. I make my own bacon, so I ingest my nitrates naturally through bacon.
I respect that. I like that.
It's a good one. NAD drip, thoughts?
I don't know. The whole NAD thing is a little weird. If you're talking about in the drip, because I think that's why I don't really think the NAD supplements are that great. I think you can just take niacin, right?
Yeah.
But that's part of the thing when you start talking about like an IV drip or something like that, is that does alleviate some of the issues with like the conversion and what your body does with. It's like the whole thing, like we put it, glutathione's like that. If you take a glutathione supplement, it's maybe not necessarily as good as taking an NAC supplement with increasing glutathione. It's like arginine and citrulline. So we know it's the same kind of thing as with NAD. Like your ultimate goal is NAD, but to supplement with it is actually not that effective at raising NAD. It's probably better to supplement with niacin, especially when it comes to price, because your body does weird things, you know. So
yeah, there's
I don't
all kinds of
know.
different conversions.
I've heard. Here's the thing too, like when it comes to like NAD drips and stuff, is people that usually talk to me about this, I don't really trust them like with their overall process. You know what I mean? It's kind of like one of these things where people tell me about like injectable this and injectable that, and I'm like,
vitamin drips and IVs and stuff like that. I'm like, what? Who has time for this or money for it, or the patients to just sit there and stuff like this? Seems like something like the granola eating celebrity woo woo people have time to do, but like it's not practical for the average individual to go and do.
Right, and then the whole NAD thing. I think we've talked about this before. Where's like what's the feedback you're looking for with NAD? Like we talked about taking like we talked about taking like longevity products. What do you like? How are you going to tell that it worked? Like, are you going to like be on your deathbed and be like, man, I cranked out an extra 6 months of my life, you know, because of that NAD? It was because we know there's a company that we know that's coming out with like a longevity kind of product. But what they were able to do with this ingredient was to give you some tangible, like you can't tell a normal supplement customer like, oh, this is going to increase longevity, because we would want to know like what's your criteria for that. Like, why would I suddenly? But if you can look at something and say this increases good cholesterol and reduces bad cholesterol, then suddenly people will go, oh, okay. Right. So does that ultimately, like, I don't know, man, the whole NAD thing is still, I don't know enough. Like I've tried to wrap my head around it, but there's just too many questions for me when it comes to NAD and stuff like that. So
yeah, and I just could you maybe raise endogenous NAD levels in the body with supplementing with it? Yes, I don't doubt that is possible. Mm-hmm. But what effects is that actually going to happen though? Like what's typical? Like, so all right, your body you get a very transient temporary increase in NAD levels. What's to prevent your body from kicking in some kind of negative or positive feedback mechanism and just metabolizing that into something else that's not going to be readily used for? So sure, we're getting the end effect of we're increasing NAD levels, but what downstream tangible effect is it actually, you know, increasing the length of your telomeres? Is it reducing wrinkles on your face? Is it increasing ATP production in the mitochondria? Is, you know, what is going on? And I don't think there's any way we could probably quantify that, at least not by today's means, I don't think.
Right. I mean, unless you have an at-home telomere scale. It's, you know what I mean? It's kind of like, I don't know. I think that it's a cool area, but also it is so much like a shot in the dark with what's going to happen. So
yeah. Haven't taken an NAD drip yet. I was hoping they might be shown to give you superpowers like Spider-Man. If it does, I'll get them.
Somebody better step up and be the guinea pig. You want to step up, be the guinea pig, and then you can report back to us. And if it does, then, you know, I'm in. So
yeah. Also understand these things aren't going to have acute effects either. It's not like caffeine where you get it and you're going, whoa, I feel on top of it. It's not. It doesn't work like that. It's like you get a vitamin B injection. You take a bunch of vitamin B pills and like your little emergency packets. Do you take it and is it instantaneously giving you this rush of energy? No, like you're drinking it and your body's processing the minerals. You might think you get a boost in energy, but more than likely that's the placebo effect kicking in, thinking that you're convinced yourself you're taking something that's good for you. So then you're naturally creating this rush of endorphins and you know, catecholamines and feel good hormones in the body.
Well, and like I tell people all the time, like in the supplement space, we're basically just one big control group. We're the guinea pigs, so we need people like this one here to go out there and experiment for us, because I'm not going to do it.
Yeah, I'm not. If a company wants to pay for me to do it, then sure.
Yeah. Then I'm open to it, but
I'm more than doing it.
Yep.
All right, we got a string of questions from Justin Thompson that came in the comments section. All right, so first one. Thoughts on Carb 10, Karbolyn, Vitargo, carb powder stacked with a pre-workout?
So this is like one of those subjective things where people not wrongly will say, eat your carbs, right? So
right.
That's fine. And I think like we all understand, get your carbs from food or whatever. I personally don't like to eat before my workout. So yeah. I have not tried Vitargo. I know what it is. It's basically like at this point when you're looking at these designer carbohydrates, you're looking, a lot of them are just designed around the speed of transit, right? Because some of them are kind of slower. I think like highly branched cyclic dextrin takes about 20 minutes, 25 minutes. So you just would want to take it a little bit sooner. Like I start to drink mine, I take demo day and I start to drink mine, like say on the way to the gym. But a lot of this stuff is just mitigating blood sugar spikes and things like that. So they are pretty cool. They're kind of expensive, but it's like ultimately it's very subjective to you. Like I said, a lot of people will eat, cream of rice and all this other stuff, and that's great. I don't like to do that. So I am personally a big fan of carbohydrate powders. Karbolyn, I don't. It's ultimately like the only difference with a lot of this stuff is the source of where the carbohydrates are coming from. So it's really like just where do you want to get your carbs from? Carbs are carbs though at the end of the day. Like, yes, there's some that are faster acting, some sort of do this and with blood sugar, but those are like the dextrose and maltodextrin and stuff. Then you have these designer carbs that are supposed to mitigate blood sugar spikes. And I think at the end of the day, your body's just going to use a carbohydrate the way it wants to use a carbohydrate. So I've definitely noticed when I take it intra-workout, definitely having better training sessions, but mostly because I don't like to eat before workout. So they're pretty cool. They're pricey. I usually use Demo Day, like I said, because Demo Day has a balance of multiple carb sources, plus it has some pump consideration. So it's almost like a pump product with a carb product. So then I can just maybe add an energy element pre-workout. So it's kind of like if instead of 3 products, you kind of can use 2, so it sort of saves some money here and there. So it just kind of depends on the person. I like that stuff though.
Yeah, there's a couple like that. They've got that. I think Granite's Intra is kind of like that, or Granite Recovery, I think is what it's actually called, but it's more of like an intra workout formula.
Yeah, that's a misleading. I don't want to say misleading, but it's an odd name for a product because they call it recovery, but you should definitely take it intra workout.
Yeah, I think NutriBio has one.
Leg day. That
thing. Leg day, yeah. And then Primeval's got Intracell. I'm trying to think of just not other Karbolyn powders. Morphogen, is there?
Morphogen's a really good one.
Hexagen's a good one.
There's also like some companies are also, I think Core does it. Core has a really great intra. Pro has a really great intra. They add aminos to their intra also. I tried that Peak Performance Labs intra. People know I like intras, and so they send me stuff to try a lot in the intra. And some of these companies, I said, have been adding the 9 EAAs also because they know that people are buying an amino product also. So sort of, again, if you go full send, it saves you from buying another product. Even the price might change a little bit. So there's some pretty cool stuff. There's some cool stuff in intros. I like that it's kind of blown up a little bit.
Yeah. I think I guess to put an end cap on this, Justin, is to say that the utility of it is going to kind of depend on what you're doing before and afterwards. It's like, have you had a meal? Like, did you have a bowl of cream of rice and whey protein 30 minutes before your training session? If so, you probably don't need an intra, especially if you're just like an average Joe that's going to the gym for an hour and a half. That's more than enough to sustain you. Now, if you have trouble getting enough calories throughout the day and you just typically don't have a big appetite or anything like that, then yeah, by all means, those intros are going to help you in that they're helping you get in the calories you need to perform, recover, repair, support muscle growth, all that good happy horse shit.
Well, I had some. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
And just in terms of the different forms, I like Carb 10, and it's probably the most affordable out of Karbolyn and Vitargo. Yeah. But really, I mean, you could get some Gatorade powder. If you really want to go the cheap route and get some intra-workout carbs, just get Gatorade powder. I mean, shit, if it's good enough for the guys in the NFL to use who actually are like high-level athletes performing at their best, it's good enough for you and me. So.
Yeah, I agree. Well, and also, so I'll give you an example. Someone asked me the other day, they said, they asked me about leg day, which is a crazy, expensive, awesome formula from NutriBio. Yeah. And they said something about using it for like cardio, I think. And I was like, no. I'm like, absolutely not. Because that would be such overkill that there's no reason to, you would use leg day. I mean, as the name implies, that is for intense training sessions.
Yeah. Or if you're like a high school athlete and you got 2-a-days or something over the summer, that's when or a college athlete and you got practices and shit, that's when you use it.
Yeah, because I've been having some questions about that type of stuff lately where people are like asking me, somebody asked me about using hydraulic from Access Ledge, which is a great formula. And they said they wanted to use it for HIIT, high intensity interval training. And I said, I don't think so, because you have I said, it's because they wanted to find a pre-workout to use for HIIT. And I said, this is a tough space because if you have too much pump, the intensity training is going to hurt your muscle contractions. You could cramp, get GI issues, all this stuff. It's sort of like any reported benefits. Like if you're doing HIIT, you're not going to lack blood flow. You know what I mean? Like, so then also I said, you got to be careful using a lot of stims too, because you're going to be cranking up your heart rate anyway. So I said, it's kind of a tough area. So it's like, people want to know what pre-workout to use. What's the best pre-workout? What's this and that? It's like, well, what are you doing? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Do I love leg day as a formula? Fuck yeah, that thing's awesome. Would using it for cardio be a complete waste of money? Absolutely. I mean, it's like you're not doing the activity that warrants using a product like that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, maybe if you're going on like an 8-hour hike, sure, you could take that. That's got carbs and aminos in it. But I mean, like you're going like a 30-minute walk on the treadmill, bike ride, or walk around the block. No, that's a complete waste of it.
Yeah, totally. You get it.
Another one from Justin Thompson. Caffeine citrate opinions. How does it compare to anhydrous?
So caffeine citrate, I think it's usually like 1-to-1 ratio. It's caffeine plus citric acid.
Yep.
And anybody that's ever used it, as much as caffeine anhydrous, right? That's basically the water removes. So you get a little like, I hate to say like harder hitting, but you get a more noticeable like quicker effect with anhydrous. Caffeine citrate to me is even a step above that. Like caffeine citrate for me hits extremely quick and extremely noticeably. So you'll see, you just have to do a little bit of math. Sometimes if companies put caffeine citrate in there, is that it's usually, like I said, a 1-to-1 ratio. And a lot of people are looking directly at caffeine content a lot of times when they're looking at a label. So I would say it actually, it's noticeably quicker acting and like harder like hitting than anhydrous is, which is it's pretty strong for me.
Yeah. I mean, you're pretty much right on the money with everything, Justin. It's like you said, it's a 1-to-1 ratio. So whenever you're looking at the thing, so if someone says it has 400 milligrams of caffeine citrate, you're actually getting 200 milligrams of actual active caffeine in there.
400 milligrams of caffeine citrate would light you up.
Yeah. And I mean, I saw this question come in the comment section, and I started doing some research before we hopped on this call. I can't find anything that explains why, but like the same anecdotal thing you said, like caffeine citrate tends to have like a more aggressive feel, even more so than anhydrous. So like dicaffeine malate, what is the other one? The other sustained released forms of caffeine on the market. They're all just they're smoother hitting. Where citrate, for whatever reason, man, it's got that aggressive edge to it. I can't find anything in the literature. Like I'm pulling up, there was a systematic review that came out in 2010 and another one in 2011, going into explaining like how caffeine works in the body and the reasons it's used for what's the condition? It's called apnea of prematurity. So they use it to open the lungs, help increase circulation, get the breathing mechanism going from like the central nervous system standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't provide any reasoning why it's the specific caffeine citrate form.
Right, and we also know too, because a lot of pre-workouts contain citric acid anyway as like a flavoring agent and stuff like that. So it's not them being present in the same formula. It's them being bonded together.
Yeah,
is the idea. Which right, I don't know why, but man. The first time I remember using it, and then I formulated a few products, and it's even just using like a couple different forms of caffeine, you get a little bit of that like multi-layered effect there where you have like, but the caffeine citrate is something that, man, I'm telling you, it's like within like minutes. And a lot of times with stimulants, it takes me some time to sort of like kick in, start to feel. Anything with caffeine citrate in there, I will feel that. I mean, sometimes as I'm drinking the pre-workout, you'll feel it kind of kick in. It's wild.
Yeah, I mean, the first time I ever think I tried it was VMI Sports KXR. This was probably 5 years ago now that I first tried it.
Yes.
Yeah, and it was my first time ever trying like a 400 milligram caffeine pre-workout, and it has 3 forms of caffeine in there.
Yeah,
but I mean it works great.
Yep. Yeah, I don't know if because speaking of them, they let me try their RTD.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if the RTD has caffeine citrate in, which I'd be curious too, because I wonder if caffeine citrate is like some of these other ingredients where once you suspend it within a liquid over time, that it doesn't stay bonded together.
Yeah.
So I don't know if the effectiveness. I remember really liking it, but I don't know if they actually use that in there or not. So I wonder if it would be different from powder to the RTD. But anyway.
Did you said you looked at the formula or you just tried it?
I just tried it. I don't think they showed me because it was going to be a little bit different, I think, than the regular version, the powder version. I know it's still in the powder version. But
yeah.
I'm not sure. I don't think I looked at it.
No, I pulled up the article on Stacked. It says caffeine is, of course, in there as well, with 3 sources combining to provide what looks to be around the same as a supplement at 400 milligrams of caffeine per serving.
So probably citrate. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess that is stable in solution, or at least it doesn't adversely affect it as if you put like something like acetyl-carnitine in there, and it would just ruin the flavor if it stays in suspension too long.
Right. Or they think it does anyway.
Yeah. I'm Rick. An AD drip, probably less risky than exposing myself to radiation. I don't know. I mean, like the greatest superheroes of all time got exposed to radiation, and I mean you got the Hulk, you got Spider-Man.
Yeah,
I mean, it seemed to work out pretty well for them.
Yeah, you only live once, might as well go for it, right?
Yeah, we know what radiation does to us. We don't know what NAD drips do to us.
That's a good point.
Yeah. Third one from Justin Thompson. Do you guys season your foods for nutritional benefits?
That's a good question.
No.
I don't.
I season it for taste.
Yeah, because I think when he mentions like turmeric, turmeric is not a good source anyway for what you're trying to get from it. Like,
yeah, the curcumin.
You're trying to get curcumin, which is hard enough to sort of get. So I think like a seasoning. I think cinnamon might be one you could do this but it's still, I don't know how much cinnamon you need, but like cinnamon for like blood sugar regulation and things like that, I think is.
Yeah.
I know some people that they put cinnamon like in their coffee, like when they, and it kind of, the idea there is it helps with their blood sugar in the morning and stuff like that. So
right.
Cinnamon's one that I won't say that I go out of my way to use it, but I think that cinnamon's a good spice to add to your food just because, but more so we're trying to figure out ways to get it to taste good. Maybe food that doesn't taste that great to taste good. So I think it's a good idea. It doesn't hurt anything, obviously, to do stuff like this. So
right. Yeah, I mean, when it comes to eating food, I use spices to make the food taste really good. I'm not doing it. If there's some ancillary health benefits, that's great. But if you're looking for specific health benefits or like the bioactive compounds from the phytochemicals that are in plants, go with the standardized extract in that situation. Like Justin said, the one difference might be cinnamon. And go for like the Ceylon cinnamon as opposed to the Saigon cinnamon. At that, the Ceylon cinnamon's a better one.
Yep.
But yeah, in that instance where you're looking for a very particular thing, I'm not going to go and drink 16 cups of green tea. I'm going to use Vaso 6. Coffee, like if we're just talking about caffeine, yeah, coffee's a great thing if I don't, instead of having to take a caffeine tab. Coffee's delicious. It's got a bunch of polyphenols and antioxidants in it. Yeah, you can go for that. If I'm looking for specific proanthocyanidins that are in grapeseed extract, I'm not going to go munch a bunch of grape seeds or grape skins. I'm going to take the grape skin extract.
It's like people going, oh, wine is healthy for you, resveratrol. It's like, yeah, you got to drink like 47 bottles of wine. So like, that's kind of a good question. I hate when people say, supplements are a fucking waste of money because just go eat real food and yada yada. It's like, okay. So like what you're saying about how good are vitamin and herb supplements in comparison, subjective, right? In some ways, but like what Robert's saying is the key is what herbal supplements can do is they can pull out. So like we talked about green tea. Green tea is a great example. There's so many things within green tea that all do like all kinds of stuff, but you would have to take it at such ungodly dosages or like amounts of green tea to get these things sometimes that you're not going to get there. Like, sure, you can say, and that's why everyone uses green teas, because there's so many studies and claims you can make, but you're just not hitting the amounts that you need. So it's like kind of a gray area. But like companies are able to pull a specific extract for a specific purpose and give it to you at dosages that your body can actually do, rather than, like you said, trying to drink 4,000 cups of green tea to get all the theophylline and the ECGCs and all this other stuff that sort of goes on within green tea.
Yep.
So you're better off taking it. But then there's other things, like you mentioned, coffee, I think actually makes a lot of sense to get it in its regular form. But then if you're talking about macros, like if you're talking about protein and amino acids and stuff like that, we know that the body, the uncoupling process and the breakdown of protein and stuff like that is important. So sometimes food, it seems like the closer to the real food or the whole food you get when it comes to protein, the body probably prefers it more. Supplements still fine, but there's a whole like nuance to that conversation. But I think anyone that just dismisses supplements and vitamins and stuff like that and says just eat real food, they're fucking idiot. So
it's and I also say we actually have, like, you're going by a bunch of parsley from the store or the oregano. You have no idea how long that's been sitting on the store shelf, or for any of those beneficial bioactive compounds, are they degraded? Are they still there in considerable amounts? And especially if you go to like the dried spice section. I mean, those things could have been sitting on the shelf for 6 months, just out into the open air and the light and everything. They could have been seriously oxidized and degraded. So that's why in certain cases, I think supplements for like those targeted bioactives, or if you read like there's some magical compound in parsley, like I know it's used in a lot of diuretic formulas, I think. If you're looking for that, go for the supplement route in that. Don't worry about trying to eat like an entire bushel of parsley from the store. If that's like, if you're going for the flavor of parsley because you like it in something, sure, that's fine. But if you're looking for a specific health benefit associated with that, try to find out what that active alkaloid or compound is, and then you can find a supplement that's maybe standardized for it.
Yeah, so I'll give you an example. She went shopping yesterday and she found these they're like fermented cucumbers she was going to use for like some recipes. Apparently the fermented cucumbers they're a source of GABA, right? But how much of those would you have to eat in order to get enough GABA? Or do you want to take a company that pulls the GABA from a natural source and then gives you it, because sometimes people take up to like 2-3 grams of GABA. How much are you getting in a fermented cucumber? I don't know.
Yeah.
But then also this ties into another like really hot button topic where people go, I want natural like stuff and synthetic, but it's like, it's because something's synthetic, it doesn't mean it's bad. Actually, in a lot of ways, synthetic can be superior to natural. That's another thing. Don't listen to people that say supplements or just eat real food. And don't listen to people that talk about natural stuff as it's like somehow like this blanket, everything natural is superior, because there isn't a lot of natural stuff in supplements anyway. Like, even it's basically all being manufactured. Like there's some sort of extraction process to it and stuff like that. So it's all very bizarre stuff. I don't listen to people that talk in those terms.
Yeah, don't fall for the natural fallacy, the naturalistic fallacy, just because it exists in nature. I mean, arsenic, hemlock exist in nature too. That doesn't mean they're good for you.
Right. It's like natural caffeine, where people are like, "Oh, natural caffeine." It's like the caffeine molecule is the same. So it's like it doesn't matter if it's synthetic or if it's natural. Natural caffeine is like a great, like, it's just a marketing term. People are like, "Oh, I want natural sources of caffeine." The fuck, caffeine's caffeine. The molecule exactly the same. So it's like, I don't know, man. It's a way we can make expensive caffeine because we know how cheap caffeine is. It's like, I don't know. It's like non-bloating creatine or something.
Yeah, man. I got a question from Heather over at Axe and Sludge sent us something.
I knew she would get a kick out of what I said last week about articles. And anyway, she messaged me about that.
Okay, here's this one.
She was listening to the audio. I told her, I said, you should have been watching the video. I was like, so you could see Robert's face when I brought up the. Oh, it's kind of like when you can tell someone wrote an article. And anyway.
That, just for the record, that's not where I was going when we brought that up, and it was too perfect that you connected those dots. It's not where I was actually going up. I was referencing a couple of other formulators that we know in the industry or used to be active in the industry.
That was me being a dick, 100%.
That's all right.
Yeah.
All right. This is an interesting one. We haven't covered much before. Can you tell me how amino acid profiles placed on protein powders are obtained? Is there a special testing procedure that's used to quantify each amino acid?
That's a really good question. I'm not 100% sure on that answer. But if you notice on the tub, it doesn't say this is the amino acid content of this protein tub. It says typical amino acid profile. So to me, that means this is in general what you get with this source of protein, right? Because we know if you look at like eggs and chicken or whatever, you see how you can see how much leucine and stuff like that and all these other things that are in each one of these things. So that's a really good question. I've never like explored that in depth, but that's something I've always kind of wondered too. But when it says typical amino acid profile, to me that just means, hey, this is likely what you're getting. It's not that we've tested this specific thing and found that this amino acid ratio is in this tub of protein. At least to me, that's just the way I sort of like.
Yeah, these supplement companies, like all the supplement companies that are putting whey protein out there, they're not running their own bioanalysis on each batch of whey protein that they're buying from Glanbia. Like they're not throwing it through their little testing process and seeing how much leucine, how much isoleucine, how much valine, arginine, glutamine, all this stuff. There's no way of doing that. 100%. Or there is a way to do it. They're not going to spend the money to do that.
Right.
Glanbia, when they're sending their protein, they may include like a certificate of analysis, and it may have an amino acid breakdown from it. Yeah. And they'll say, hey, this is a typical, because they've kind of standardized the milk that they're getting in their extraction process and the purification process that they go from milk to whey protein concentrate to isolate to hydrolyzed whey protein, and then this, that, and the other. So they're getting it from standardized information, or you can just go look up a bunch of studies on PubMed that says amino acid profile of whey protein, and it's like just by putting typical amino acid profile, I mean, you could just jack that and stick it on your label there. So I mean, there's no rules in place, at least to my knowledge. And maybe I'll get off the phone here. I'll give Mark Glazier a call because he probably knows this a little bit more in depth than I do. Knows a lot more in depth than I do. I'll correct that right there. And he can maybe give me some more information. So maybe I'll do a little bit of homework. But I just wanted to get this conversation rolling first, and I can always follow up on it.
That's a good question. And also, like, I think that's why I don't know the whole like process, but say you have a company, say like Axe and Sludge, right?
Wait. Does Axe and Sludge list their profile on their tubs? Do you have their protein powder by you?
Not by me. I have it somewhere, but what I was going to say is then you have like, if a company has whey protein and then say they use beef protein, say take Axe and Sludge does that with their meal replacement, or take somewhere like Granite, because I don't think Granite puts their typical amino acid profile content on there. But if suddenly you have beef and you have egg and you have whey, then you would ultimately probably have to have like 3 different profiles, and then it gets all like very weird.
Yeah.
It's like, what would be the typical amino acid content when you have 3 totally different amino acid profiles within, and then like some people are adding collagen. So how would you put the typical amino acid profile when we know collagen is much higher in, say, like glycine, and it's lower in? So where does that all like sort of fit in? I'm not really sure. I think that what you said is probably accurate. At least that's kind of my educated guess on the whole thing. Is you're taking whatever data you can from Glanbia and saying this is typically what to expect when you ingest this type of protein.
And I pulled up the Axe and Sludge website, and they do list a typical amino acid profile on there.
Yeah.
So that's what you would see right there.
Yeah. Which is good, because it's actually a good teaching tool for me when I show people, like, hey, there's BCAAs in protein.
Right there, 2.5 grams of leucine, right there.
It's also what I use, because people always ask, like, what's the ideal EAA profile, right? And what I usually say to people, because I don't think there is a concrete like answer, is I say, take a look at, I said, if I was going to develop an amino acid product, not that you have to do this, I said just a general thing that sort of gets me started. I was like, I would probably try to mimic the protein profile or the amino acid profile of like a whey protein, right? And that's where I think the study that we always see, it's like a 2-to-1, like is it like 2 point something leucine, 1 point something valine, 1 point something iso? That's what you see on protein. Like if you look at that screen, that's what I always show people. It's like basically 2 to 1 to 1 in your typical whey protein. So I think that that's where that stuff kind of comes from, where you'll see like companies like Compound Solutions, stuff like that, that have made trademark forms of BCAAs.
Yeah.
That's basically the ratio they use. I think it's coming from what you see in a typical amino acid profile content.
Yeah, and like this study right here shows, and it's from the Amino Acids Journal 2018, shows you the typical breakdown of whey protein per 100 grams. So you can kind of compare this right here. So in 100 grams of this whey protein that they used, there's 8.6 grams of leucine, where the Axe and Sledge one, it's saying 9.1.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. And then you basically divide it by 4, because you're going to get 25 grams or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Protein. So,
yeah,
it makes sense.
And there's going to be modest fluctuations between the two batches. Right. I mean, like you're going to have maybe the cows ate a little bit different one day than the next, or they pulled it at a different time, and all of that. So, general terms, speaking with general stuff. And there was a follow-up question that she had to this. Is seeing a typical amino acid profile on a protein the best way beyond the ingredients list to determine if a protein is amino spiked or not? No, I don't think so, because like it kind of goes back to what we were saying. It's like they're just pulling that from some table or reference literature that they're getting from either their supplier or their contract manufacturer. They're not actually running the tests on their own whey protein. Most of them. There might be a couple of companies out there, but the vast majority are not, because it's so cost prohibitive. And so they're just listing the typical amino acid profile. If you want to see if a protein's spiked, look down in the ingredients list and see if there's free-form glutamine, creatine, arginine, lysine, glycine, all of those.
Yep. And I know I agree with you, because I just don't think that the typical amino acid profile is 100% indicative of what's in the tub.
Correct. Yeah.
It's just what you would normally find in whey protein. Like you said, if there's a table that shows that, that's where that stuff is coming from.
Yeah.
I don't know why. Like I said, I gave an example why I don't think, because I could be wrong. I don't think granite shows it on there, but I think that's probably because you have multi-source protein in there. Or if you have beef, I think that's going to throw things off. And
looking at the back packaging right now. No, there's nothing listed on there.
Because you think that would be weird for them to try to do that.
Actually, you know what? Let's check NutriBio Muscle Matrix. That's a blended protein.
Because I think Robbie in their theirs puts their amino acid profile content on.
Yeah, they do.
And that's casein and whey, which it's a little bit different, but
yeah,
I think they're just taking, like I said, what we normally see. Although if you do look, well, because sometimes I think the amounts might be a little bit different depending on the amount of grams of protein you're getting.
Yeah. What was that? That. All right.
A lot of I thinks and stuff like that.
Yeah. Where is the tab? I don't see the profile listed on here.
Yeah, maybe that's why.
Yeah.
I have some.
Yeah, that's something they're getting from the manufacturer. That's not something that they're actually running a test on it or anything.
Yeah, they're getting it from their supplier, their ingredient supplier. I can check too. I have some muscle matrix in the pantry. I can check. I'll take a look at that. I'll see just what different companies do because I have some blends and other things like that. So, but yeah, I think it's just a general guideline kind of thing. I don't think there's really a lot to take from it.
No, I mean the best way is going to be looking at the ingredients list and see if there's free-form amino acids on there, and hopefully it's also just make sure you're buying your protein from a reputable company. Don't go for any of those bargain bin ones that you might see at like a mom and pop store.
Yeah, because we also know too that just because, say, I've seen some companies add glutamine for like some gut health sort of support for protein and stuff like that.
Yeah.
If there is added aminos to it, it doesn't necessarily just mean it's spiked. They might be, accounting for that, but it's not a great look. I would want the company to explain to me or show it to me because we know, like a company sent me their protein the other day and they had BCAAs in there, and I was like, that it just doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah.
Like not even from an amino spiking standpoint, but why would you have BCAAs in a protein when you're already getting an optimal amount of BCAAs from the protein itself?
Agreed. I brought up Coors because theirs is a blend, and they actually list a typical amino acid profile on there.
Interesting, because I think Apollon does the same thing.
Yeah,
I know they do.
Yep, because it's like 2.68 grams of leucine there, 2.628 grams of leucine right there.
Well, I get a lot of these questions too because people ask me about language that are used on labels.
Mm-hmm.
Like some will say take it with food or without food, and some will say cycle off of it. This, and people, a lot of this stuff when it comes to label compliance is template approach. Companies are just doing it to cover liability for themselves. It doesn't necessarily mean that that's 100% how you should use a product or, with food, Correct. Without food. It's a lot of it is just companies want to cover their bases from the FDA and from a legal perspective. So like I said, once you have the template right, you're going to probably replicate that template over each of your products just to not have to worry about it.
Agreed.
Whereas like you'll start to see companies will actually, because I think there was a big question, Glaxon, when they released their pre-workout, a lot of people were like, whoa, wait a minute, why is it telling me to take a pre-workout 30 to 45 minutes before a workout? I've been reading 15 minutes my entire life.
Yeah.
Because Glaxon was actually we had a big conversation about this because I was like, for me, it takes time for these ingredients to sort of do its thing. 15 minutes is not usually enough.
Never. So, it never is.
Let's just say what it is. It's not enough time. Like a lot of times, like if you've noticed, like you're in your workout, it could be for me sometimes, especially when you're talking about having a meal involved, it could be an hour, hour and a half. You notice sometimes you're in your workout and it's like at the end of your workout, you're feeling really good, but you got to go. So it's like Glaxon was one of the first companies to put like 45 minutes before a workout. People like freaked out about it. And they're like, this is actually us taking the time. Like most companies are just copy and pasting legal template, approaches from other companies or whatever,
Correct.
and just sort of putting it out there. So you can't. Oh, that's another thing that kind of sucks is you can't always take what's on the label as gospel either, because a lot of it is just, like I said, to reduce liability on their end.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at most of the studies, like citrulline or caffeine, they're giving it to they're not giving it to the subjects 15 minutes before they go to an exercise trial. It's at least 30 minutes more often than not 60 minutes to make sure, because that's when it reaches peak levels in the blood, and you can actually start deriving benefit from those ingredients.
Or like we talked about choline sources on here. Now all of a sudden you have like nootropics and alpha GPC. It's like 2 hours where they would give them to people, and you would see it reach peak level. So does that make sense to put it in a pre-workout and take it 15 minutes before you work out if it takes 2 hours to sort of get there? So yeah, that's the supplement space.
Hey man, one other thing is that a lot of these brand owners probably have no clue what the fuck these ingredients are or what proper dosing for them is, and all they're doing is they go look at a competitor's label and they say, oh, well, they wrote 15 to 20 minutes before your workout. I'm going to use the exact same verbiage just because, look, they've already been vetted. They're clean. They're a good company, so I'm just going to steal their dosing directions and apply it to my label because why not?
1000%. Because making a label in this space is actually a little bit difficult. It's a process. It's painstaking sometimes. You see good companies make mistakes on their labels. So, because I remember I was having a conversation with some idiot on TikTok where I said you don't have to cycle creatine. If you do, and basically, like when it comes to creatine conversation, as I'm repping the shirt,
there you go.
A lot of what we say in this bit, like, okay, just take 5 grams of creatine every single day. Just take it because you're trying to get people to get over the hump to just take it. But there is nuance to the conversation. Like,
correct.
Is it good to cycle off of it at some point? Probably yes, because you just have receptors in the body, and you might just be sort of doing overkill. But that's all like nuance to the conversation. So, but that takes too long to explain to somebody. So you're like, because what are the odds someone's going to remember to take it every day? Probably pretty low. So you're just like, just take it, right? But there is nuance to the conversation. So someone was like, tell me what an idiot I was, because they were like, it says to cycle off of it right on the label. And I was like, I want to let you in on a little secret. That company that put that on that label has no fucking clue what they're talking about. I was like, they're just using, but you can't explain that to some people. So I'm just like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, man. All right, guys. Last call for any comments or questions you guys got before Justin and I hop off and put into another fantastic episode of Bourbon Brothers.
And then we got so LSU McNeese State, you said?
I believe, I'm pretty sure that's what it is. Let me double check. LSU McNeese State, 7:00 this Saturday.
Oh, 7:00. That's when Miami and Appalachian State play on ESPNU.
Appalachian State was wily when they were just like a little Div 2 school or a AA school. They upset some of the big boys, and then they jumped up to Division 1. They stopped being as threatening, it seems.
They're always like a really good coach team, and that's what kind of sucks about Miami, because Miami is not a good coach team. Like, obviously they have much more talent than Appalachian State, but fans are just like, this is the type of game that's going to suck because you should blow them out, but it's not going to go that way because they're a better coach team. We just know how that goes.
Yeah. Any special bourbons for the weekend that you're looking to drink for the game, or any other big plans?
That was kind of funny too about the Alabama game. I didn't even drink anything during the game because. So as a Miami fan, as soon as Miami was done with their first drive, you could tell how that game was going to go. Yeah. So I didn't even drink anything because I didn't have time. I didn't even have time because the game was over. Yeah. By the time Alabama had their first drive, and I get that sounds dramatic, but it was the way that Miami ran their drive and then gave the ball back to them. You're just like, I'm out. So I didn't drink any bourbon last week for the game. So this is a night game, 7:00. So for sure, I'm hoping. Actually, I should say, it's supposed to, the Eagle Rare and Buffalo Trace are supposed to be here. It was either today or Friday. I think it's Friday. So I'm thinking Eagle Rare because, God, I love that stuff.
Yeah.
So good.
I'm gonna have to try. I'm gonna have to get my hands on some. Maybe I'll after we get off this podcast and I finish doing chest and shoulders, I'll go check it out and see if I can go run down to the little place over there and see if I can. Maybe I'll get graced with some or find out when their next shipment is coming, and we'll see.
Yeah, man. All right, brother. Cool. Well, we should both get W's this weekend and rinse some of that salty taste.
Yeah, get rid of the stench, the foul taste of defeat. So, all right, everyone, thank you for tuning in. We appreciate you checking out another episode of the Bourbon Brothers Podcast. If you like what we're doing, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you're always aware when we go live for these podcasts. And if you listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Podbean, Stitcher, Spotify, or any other podcast perusing platform, give us a 5-star review. That helps us climb up in the almighty algorithm that dictates anything into everything to which we are exposed these days. And my friend, yes, I'll see you soon, my friend. We'll be in touch.
All right, bud.